Most people who get to that elderly age, they don't die of heart attacks, they die of infection. Bacteria seems to really mount a good defense against the kind of infection that might take you out, smooth out your metabolism, lower your bad LDL cholesterol and improve your good HDL and lower your triglyceride level, improve better circulation. There is a bacteria ecosystem in our brain. Could we be treating in the future neurodegeneration using a probiotic? How cool would that be? Has been shown to level off the symptoms, like pretty much stop the progression of Parkinson's disease. She had brain cancer, glioblastoma, death sentence. Nobody survives more than 1 or 2 years with that things. She's going on almost 7 years, cancer-free. And you know what she did? Longevity isn't just living long. It's not about a number you're trying to hit. It's not like going online and booking a seat in a movie theater that's reserved for you. Like, you can't do that, right? So we all want to live as long as we can. But to me, in addition to trying to get as far as we can in the journey of life, it's really about how do we live in a way that is enjoyable. We've got not just quality of life, but really joy of living. And that's really what I'm fascinated by, is really sort of like, how do we get there and how do we align that long runway along with having a good time along the way, the good quality of life. So to me, those two things are really important. And you know, people talk about health span, but health span is just a word that goes back to health, which itself is kind of an objective word. It's a term. You know, but when I tell you quality of life, enjoying life, you're hearing that and you're already imagining what it would mean for you. And so that to me brings our humanity back into it. So for me, one of the ways I'm looking at longevity is really thinking about our humanity, you know, who we are, what's important to us as individuals, as communities, as people along the way. I think that's really how you get a fuller picture of it. So I totally think, you know, all the people working in a lab on the hallmarks of aging and the biological and the cellular, the senescence, the mitophagy, all that stuff, amazing. They're the building blocks, they're the bricks being placed into the brick wall to understand what's going on with aging and how to counter, you know, unhealthy aging. I'm actually trying to take a little bit of a larger humanitarian, or, you know, our humanity oriented look at it, which is to look at the quality. And, you know, things that are particular interest to me are cognition, brain health. So important. Brain's not a black box anymore. It's still a lot we don't know. But did you know, since we're talking about the microbiome, did you know that the brain has its own microbiome? You know, listen, when I went to medical school, I was told in no uncertain terms that the brain is sterile. Sterile environment. You do a tap of the spinal cord, and if you're tapping into the fluid around the brain, there's no way in heck you're going to find any bacteria in that unless you've got meningitis or some kind of brain infection, right? Well, we now have, within the last few years, like really nailed it down that there is a bacteria ecosystem in our brain, like in our gut brain. And you know what? The brain bacteria are not quite as diverse as in the gut, but about 20% of the diversity of the gut bacteria is also in the brain. A study was done in Italy, Bologna, Italy. They looked at adults across all their entire spectrum of adulthood, 20 to 40, 40 to 70, 70 to 90, 90 to 100. And then they actually looked at people who were 100 to 114, super-agers. Okay, that's like an entire adult lifespan. They looked at their gut microbiome, and then they used computational biology to ask, within the age categories, and especially with the super-agers, 100 and above, any gut bacteria pop out as super high, like standout bacteria that you didn't see in other populations. And it turns out for the people who were 100 years old or older, there are 4 bacteria that are standouts. Want to hear what they are?
Yes, I do.
Okay. One of them I know you've heard of. Three of them I hadn't heard of. All right. And this is the exciting part, like being a scientist and a researcher. I mean, you probably appreciate this as much as anyone else. Like the excitement of discovery in biology is like why we do what we do. It's cool. One of the bacteria is called Odoribacter, Odori bacter. Second one is called Oscillobacter, like oscillation bacter. Another one is Kristin elensis. Okay. And then the fourth one is Akkermansia. These four bacteria are standouts more of these bacteria in these super-agers than you see in any other group, and that stand out at higher levels when they get to this age. What do they do? Okay, now we know Akkermansia boosts your immune system, lowers your inflammation. We know that it helps to regulate blood glucose. We also know that Akkermansia, we actually think that Akkermansia might actually interfere with the development of dementia, somehow regulating brain health. And then the latest piece of discovery about Akkermansia, it's a bacteria. All right, so bacteria have a shell around them physically. They're like a beetle. A beetle's got a little shell, like the bug. There's a particle on the shell of Akkermansia. I don't know if you heard about this. Have you heard of P9? Okay, P as in Peter. Number 9 is a newly discovered particle on the shell surrounding Akkermansia. All right, and you know what they found out is that if you take a live Akkermansia bacteria and blow it up into a million pieces, you just kill it, like pulverize it. The P9 will still have a beneficial biological effect if it's floating around. So it's like a piece of shrapnel from Akkermansia that's still biologically useful. And you know what it does? It causes your gut to secrete more natural GLP-1. Mind blown, right? So now you know this is the bacteria that's doing a lot of things. And it's even got its own, vest of little tricks in its shell. Anyway, so that's one of the bacteria. These other bacteria do things like lower inflammation, fight specific harmful bacteria like E. coli. So, think about it. As you get older, most people who get to that elderly age, they don't die of heart attacks, they die of infection, pneumonia, and all this other kind of stuff. So, one of these bacteria seems to really, really mount a good defense against the kind of infection that might take you out. Other ones that you smooth out your metabolism, lower your bad LDL cholesterol and improve your good HDL and lower your triglyceride level. Other ones seem to improve better circulation. These are not surprises once you actually break down what these four bacteria, are involved with in terms of your physical health. Makes total sense. And these guys, these centenarians and older, okay, because I had never considered when I first started to take a look at longevity, I thought, like 100 is like, all right, that's like a good peak to begin looking at. But I had no idea, like, okay, let's just do a dive on the deep end of the pool and look at their gut microbiome and look at all this stuff. And guess what? You can eat foods that can stimulate these bacteria to grow. If you look at our jaws, you look at our teeth, you look at sort of our digestive system, we are, through evolution, designed to be omnivores. We can tackle pretty much anything you want to put in. Now, obviously you put bad stuff in and your body's going to respond in a bad way. You put good stuff in. So there's a wide range. We've got a repertoire. Like we got the mixed martial arts of digestion and processing foods that we're hardwired with. And that's a good thing, And yes, there are lots of different philosophies and approaches and practices of how to eat healthy. But I think diversity is key. Our gut bacteria are no different than any other pet we might actually have in our home. You got a pet dog, pet cat, pet parakeet, pet goldfish, same deal. You got to be feeding them every day. Got to feed them higher quality food if you want them to last longer, And how do our like especially the furry pets, pay us back with attention, with affection, like it forms that bond, that connection. Well, that's happening at a microscopic level in our gut. Like we now realize that we've got to take care of, like the pregnant mom saying, like, I'm eating for two. We're actually eating for 39 trillion bacteria. You do a tap of the spinal cord, and if you're tapping into the fluid around the brain, there's no way in heck you're going to find any bacteria in that unless you've got meningitis or some kind of brain infection, right? Well, we now have, within the last few years, like really nailed it down that there is a bacteria ecosystem in our brain, like in our gut brain. And you know what? The brain bacteria are not quite as diverse as in the gut, but about 20% of the diversity of the gut bacteria is also in the brain.
Wow.
Undiscovered country. Think about that. I mean, what could we be doing? I mean, could we be treating in the future neurodegeneration using a probiotic? How cool would that be? And in fact, there's some good data already. Like I was really struck by some of these bacteria. So, you get your gut microbiome checked, you get a huge amount of information. Hard to know what to do with if you're not like regularly, and if you're not an expert in the field, okay? But we do know a few bacteria that are standouts. And I think that knowing some of these standouts, like the Akkermansia I mentioned earlier, well, there's a new one, a new kid in town called Lactobacillus plantarum. Now, if you go buy a typical probiotic, like anywhere you order, you'll find a lot of times it's got Lactobacillus plantarum, but there's a version of it that's called PS128. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
This thing has been shown to level off the symptoms, like pretty much stop the progression of Parkinson's disease. Bacteria, brain interaction. I don't have the answer to, I don't have the explanation to how it works, but wow, what a phenomenal find, because it opens up a whole new gateway for us to try to figure out how to solve these previously unsolvable problems. At one point, certainly when I was younger, I went to medical school, like, oh, can you get to 100? Like, nah, most people can't. I mean, maybe you get one or two people that are really old. Now, obviously, I had no idea, like so many people were getting to 100. But I think once you breach that 100 mark, once you cross that line, all right, now you start entering super-ager territory. And super-agers or super-centenarians are people to get to 110, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, like those are the people who are getting to the summit. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't think there's a strict definition, but I do think it's in that 10% of the 10%, the tippy top of all the people who age. And I think that the super-ager probably also includes people that are actually very vibrant along the way, I mean, you're not counting, I don't think you'd call a super-ager somebody who's in a coma, for the last 10 years of their life. Unconscious habit of eating ultra-processed foods that have a lot of added sugar and other additives that wreck our system. And by the way, these are the things that we all grew up with. I mean, we live in modern society, and since the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the big revolution, the Industrial Revolution, hit the food system to make foods cheaper, more widely available, more shelf stable. It was beneficial, good, well-intentioned, okay, and tastes really great. And so, engineers went there to figure out, well, what chemicals can we add, to make it really tasty. So, I mean, look, even for those of us who are very, very health conscious and can speak authoritatively about like the evidence of what a good, healthy diet should be more like, the reality is that, when you're a kid and I was a kid, we loved product X, Y, and Z that we saw on television. that we got in Halloween, our Halloween pumpkins when trick-or-treating, that we looked forward to, when our moms took us to the store at the checkout counter, we wanted to grab something. Can I have one? Like, I mean, look, we're all the same. And, this is not about like big food conspiracy. This is really about, that was a time when this explosion that was considered innovation came about. Long shelf life, cheap, widely available, tasted really great. I mean, it was pretty cool at the time. Now it's not so cool. And I think this is really where the social barometer is beginning to reset itself to say, we need to be having a conversation about this now, and to ask, are we doing more damage to ourselves by not acting to be more progressive, to align what we know about health with our food system? And that's one of the reasons I'm really glad about some of the conversations that are going on. Maybe this is why people in our generation need to be stepping up even harder, not only on our own behalf, but on behalf of children, kids. Because if you think about it, like, we didn't know better at the time, but now we know better. And so why should we be subjecting the young people of today to maybe a fate we can't, we got to deal with the backpack that we were handed a long time ago. All right. And I think it's reversible. Like, we're all hardwired for health. We're all hardwired for healing. It's never too late to change, to try to get back to basics. But I think for kids, we owe it to them to give them a clean start. I'm a cancer researcher. If you look at the statistics, 1 in 2 men are going to develop cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 3 women are going to develop cancer in their lifetime. So think about it. With those stats, you go into an elevator with a bunch of people, on your way to a holiday party or whatever, wherever you're going to go. I mean, you look around and you're like, my gosh, this is like a terrible statistic, right? But actually, a lot of cancers are preventable, and and you can dodge colon cancer and breast cancer and a lot of other cancers. If we only had a better immune system, if we only had better control over our circulation, so we're not feeding cancers with a new blood supply, if we were able to have diets that actually killed off cancer stem cells, if we had more antioxidant opportunities to neutralize those free radicals, or that would cause oxidative stress to trigger mutations in our DNA. We can fix our DNA as well. If there's ways that we could actually lower inflammation, which is the gasoline to cancer. You might have a tiny incipient cancer. You have inflammation on top of that. Okay. Now you're basically pouring gasoline onto the embers of a fire. It's going to roar. Okay. And then it's immunity, our immune system. And I read about this in my first book, Eat to Beat Disease. We are hardwired for health. We've got 5 health defense systems. If we could actually keep those shields up and fortify them and tend to them like we would with the gate to our house, or the locks on our window, or a lock on your door, we'd actually get a lot further away. We'd probably dodge a lot of cancers. And there are foods that can do it as well. Diet and lifestyle. It's not just the food, but food actually, we now know there are certain foods that can actually have a pretty profound effect. And so this is another example, like metabolic syndrome, like this stealer of years. Okay, this robber baron of longevity is cancer, which seemed to be so nefarious. Did you ever see the latest Denzel Washington movie called Equalizer?
Yeah.
Equalizer 3.
Yeah.
So there's this Italian guy who basically said, oh, this organized crime, locally is like cancer. There's no cure. You know what? There was a great line in the movie, but in fact, there is a cure to cancer, and we know it now. I mean, I as a cancer researcher, I'm seeing it in motion. We're not quite there yet, but with immunotherapy, I got to tell you, if you want to see an amazing story that's based on science, go check out the Instagram account of a person that goes by the handle The Brainy Blonde. Okay. She's blonde, very smart. All right. There's like a triple entendre, but she had brain cancer, glioblastoma, death sentence. Nobody survives more than 1 or 2 years with that things. She's going on almost 7 years cancer-free. And you know what she did? She took a peptide vaccine that boosted her own immune system, all right, and that was able to get her through. So in the future, this is what we're going to be able to do to conquer the scourge. That's still treatment. Much better to prevent it in the first place so you don't have to go through that pain and suffering. I think cardiovascular disease, and like when people don't understand I'm a vascular guy, I study blood vessels, so this is like right in my wheelhouse. You got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels in our body. These are the highways and byways that bring the oxygen that we breathe and the nutrients that we eat to every single organ, every single cell in our body. So if your blood vessels are healthy, you got a chance to be healthy in the rest of your body. But if you got sick blood vessels, ain't no way you're going to be able to optimize your health, because your delivery channels for oxygen and nutrients aren't actually going to be able to fulfill what your body actually needs for optimal health. And so cardiovascular disease is not just heart disease, not just stroke, but really a compromise of the circulation anywhere along the way. That's a long journey, 60,000 miles. If you pulled out 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels out of your body and lined them up end to end, that would form a thread that would encircle the earth twice. You could orbit the earth twice with that thread of blood vessels. That's in a single human adult body. All right. So this is why I think cardiovascular disease, which robs us of good circulation, is so diabolical in terms of stealing it. So what are some of the consequences where we know it steals us? Well, if you get blockages in your heart, you're going to actually have not as strong a pump of your heart. Not just a heart attack, but you actually compromise the muscle contraction of your heart. It's like your bicep that can't lift quite as much. All right. It's called ejection fraction. Your heart just can't inject as much blood. That leads to heart failure. All right. So what you really want to be able to do is to preserve the pump, the muscle function of the heart as much as possible. We can measure that with like a sonogram of the heart. We call it a cardiac ultrasound. You can measure that. You can see that. We do that every day in the cardiology's office. And of course, you get other problems of circulation in the heart. You can have heart rhythm problems. People always think about cardiovascular disease like heart attack. Actually, more commonly, you have an arrhythmia, meaning the rhythm, the beat of the heart. Listen, whether you like rap or Beethoven, you're listening to a rhythm, okay? And the fact that the rhythm has a pattern and you're digging that pattern, that's what's important for music, also equally important for the heart, all right? And when you actually have vascular problems, you can affect the rhythm of the heart. When the heart starts to quiver or fibrillate, is what we call it, that can lead to sudden death, rob you instantly. Boom, you drop. Bye-bye. All right. That's why you use a defibrillator in the mall or in an airplane or an airport. Okay. That can be life-saving because you're putting the rhythm back, but you got to have a good cardiovascular system. You need good blood vessels to be able to flow. And of course, blockages to the heart. You block that blood flow, that's like putting a roadblock up on a busy traffic lane on a highway that's, flowing. Suddenly you got rush hour. Now traffic slows to a halt. All right. And now you got a parking lot. And when you got a parking lot on blood flow in your heart, game over. You start killing heart cells, muscle downstream. And then, you're really compromising your quality of life. And that ultimately will lead to other problems as well. Same thing I told you about the heart can happen in the brain. So cardiovascular, if you think about your heart, you think about your brain. Listen, these are the two things, and these are the three things that we talked about: metabolic syndrome, cancer, and cardiovascular disease that are so obvious that they rob us prematurely, okay, of the longer life that we should be having. And because they are all so tied to diet and lifestyle. And that's the one thing that in medicine, your medical doctor who went to training and medical school, we are not taught. I'm telling you, as a card-carrying doctor, I received like a week's worth of nutrition, all right, when I was in medical school, and nothing in lifestyle. Hopefully that will change. But this is why, podcasts like this, programs like this, YouTube programming like this is what we are trying to do, is to educate people that the solution to health lies first in our own hands. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.